Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned, and I will sin, and I won't regret. Modern Queen Tales presents Queen of All Pirates. The stones of St. Jude's convent held the cold of centuries, pressing against my knees with a relentless, biting dampness. For 10 years, those stones were the only grounding I had, the only reality besides the suffocating scent of incense and the endless drone of chanted prayers. I knelt in the shadowy alcove of the chapel, the rough wool of my habit scratching at the skin I had scrubbed raw earlier that evening. The single, flickering candle before the icon of the Virgin cast long, distorted shadows across the altar, making the painted faces of the saints seem to sneer in judgment. My name was Sister Maria Aglietti then, a name chosen for its association with purity and martyrdom, but beneath the suffocating layers of black and white, the blood of Isabella Warren boiled. The fire hadn't been extinguished by the constant fasting, or the hours spent in silent contemplation. It had only been compressed, waiting for the right moment to ignite. That moment arrived with the tolling of the midnight bell. It was the signal for matins, the time when the sisters would gather, a flock of silent ravens in the dim light, to chant the psalms. But tonight, I didn't rise to join them. I remained kneeling, listening to the soft shuffle of sandals receding down the stone corridor. I waited until the heavy oak door of the chapel groaned shut, leaving me alone with the flickering candle and the echoing silence. I stood, my joints aching from hours of stillness. I moved with a practiced, predatory silence, a skill honed by years of avoiding the watchful eyes of Mother Superior. I slipped through a side door, a door meant only for the maintenance of the sanctuary lamps, and stepped into the cloister garden. The night air hit me like a physical blow, carrying the scent of damp earth and the distant, intoxicating tang of salt water, the sea. It was a constant presence, a restless giant breathing just beyond the convent walls, a reminder of the vast, chaotic world I was forbidden to touch. The escape route had been meticulously planned over months of stolen glances and whispered observations. A loose stone in the outer wall, near the overgrown patch of climbing roses, provided the necessary foothold. I scrambled up, ignoring the thorns tearing at my habit and the skin beneath. I swung a leg over the top, balancing precariously on the rough masonry, and looked down. The drop was sheer, ending in a tangle of gorse and uneven ground leading down to the cliffs. I didn't hesitate. I dropped, the impact jarring my teeth, a sharp pain shooting up my legs. I was free. The descent to the docks was a desperate scramble through darkness and uneven terrain. The sounds of the sea grew louder, a roaring rhythmic symphony that drowned out the frantic beating of my heart. I reached the edge of the harbor town just as the first gray light began to bleed into the eastern sky. The town was a chaotic sprawl of taverns, brothels, and warehouses, a stark contrast to the ordered sterility of St. Jude's. The smell of rotting fish, spilled ale, and unwashed bodies replaced the cloying incense. I moved quickly through the narrow, winding streets, keeping to the shadows. My habit, once a symbol of devotion, was now a dangerous beacon. I needed a ship. Any ship that would take me far away from the convent's grasp. I found myself at the end of a long wooden pier, staring at a massive galleon, its dark hull imposing even in the dim light. The ship smelled of tar, old wood, and danger. A voice, rough and deep as grinding stones, shattered the silence. "Lost your flock, little lamb?" I spun around. A man leaned against a piling, a silhouette against the lightening sky. As he stepped forward, the Aglietti meager light revealed a face weathered by sun and salt, a scar slashing across his left cheek, and eyes the color of a stormy sea. He wore a heavy leather coat over a linen shirt, and a cutlass hung casually at his hip. He was a pirate, one of the outcasts the sisters prayed against. I am looking for passage, I said, my voice surprisingly steady considering the trembling in my hands. I forced my shoulders back, pulling the remnants of my dignity tightly around me. I met his gaze squarely, refusing to flinch. Passage? He let out a harsh bark of laughter. This ain't a passenger vessel, sister. We deal in different cargo. He looked me up and down, a slow, appraising glance that made my skin crawl. What can a holy woman offer the likes of us? I can offer a mind sharper than any blade on this ship, I replied, the words a challenge. I can navigate by the stars. I can calculate trajectories and provisions. I spent 10 years studying the heavens and the earth while you lot were busy looting and drinking. He raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in his stormy eyes. Bold words for a woman wearing the cloth of the church. But words won't swab a deck or reef a sail. I am a quick learner, I said, my jaw tightening, and I have nothing left to lose. He studied me for a long moment, the silence stretching taut between us. My name is Captain Oliver Pritchard, he finally said, his voice dropping to a low rumble. And this is the fortune bringer. You can come aboard, sister, but understand this. On this ship, there is no God but the sea, and no law but mine. You earn your keep, or you go over the side. Understood? Understood, I said, a grim satisfaction settling over me. I turned my back on the town, on the convent, on the life of Sister Maria Aglietti, and walked up the gangplank of the fortune bringer. The transition from holy woman to pirate was brutal. The heavy woolen robes of my habit were the first things to go. I traded them for a canvas shirt, sturdy breeches, and leather boots, clothes I bartered for with a gold cross I had secreted away years ago. The physical change was liberating, a shedding of the suffocating weight I had carried for so long. But the real transformation happened beneath the surface. The discipline instilled by the monastery, the hours of silent endurance, the rigid adherence to order these proved to be the perfect foundation for life on a pirate ship. I approached my new life with the same meticulous calculation I had applied to the copying of illuminated manuscripts. The crew, a motley collection of cutthroats and thieves, viewed me with suspicion and open hostility. I was an anomaly, a woman among men, a holy figure in a den of iniquity. They tested me at every turn, assigning me the most grueling tasks, the filthiest jobs. I scrubbed the decks until my hands bled, hauled on ropes until my muscles screamed, and learned the intricacies of the rigging under the unforgiving sun. I never complained. I never showed weakness. I met their jeers with cold, silent stares, channeling the intimidating presence of Mother Superior into a weapon of my own. When a burly sailor named Grimsby tried to corner me below decks, I used the element of surprise and a heavy iron belaying pin to break his arm. The dull crack echoed through the hold, a stark declaration of my boundaries. Captain Pritchard watched my progress with a detached, calculating gaze. He never intervened, never offered assistance. He was testing me, waiting to see if I would crack under the pressure. I didn't. I thrived. My knowledge of navigation, gleaned from years of studying the dusty tomes in the convent library, quickly proved invaluable. The ship's quartermaster, a grizzled old man named Elias, had grown half-blind and unreliable. I began assisting him, pointing out subtle shifts in the stars, calculating our position with a precision that left him bewildered. Within months, I had replaced him. I stood beside Captain Pritchard at the helm, charting our course, analyzing weather patterns, and anticipating the movements of merchant vessels. I learned to read the sea like I had once read scripture, deciphering its moods and utilizing its currents to our advantage. The crew's respect came slowly, grudgingly. It was earned through competence, a cold, calculating intelligence, and a refusal to bow to any man. I became a fixture on the quarterdeck, a silent, imposing presence, my dark hair tied back tightly, a cutlass strapped to my side. I was no longer Sister Maria Aglietti. I was Isabella Warren, the navigator of the fortune bringer. Yet, the transition was not without its internal struggles. The psychological tension was a constant, low-level ache. I still heard hymns echoing in my mind when the wind howled through the rigging. The scent of salt and tar sometimes triggered a visceral memory of incense. I was a woman commanding a deck of sinners, a woman who had abandoned her vows to embrace a life of violence and plunder. The guilt, a heavy, familiar companion, gnawed at me during the long, quiet watches. I found myself silently reciting prayers, seeking absolution for the blood that stained my hands. The moral weight of my new life was immense, a constant counterbalance to the intoxicating power of the freedom I had claimed. This internal conflict was complicated further by Captain Oliver Pritchard. He was a man of contradictions, brutal yet surprisingly intelligent, ruthless yet possessing a strange, twisted code of honor. We spent hours together in his cabin, poring over charts, planning raids, analyzing the movements of the Spanish fleet. The proximity, the shared danger, the intellectual challenge we presented to each other, it sparked a fire between us, a dangerous, forbidden romance. It began with subtle glances, lingering touches, and a tension that hummed in the air whenever we were near. One evening, after a particularly lucrative raid on a Portuguese galleon, we found ourselves alone on the quarterdeck. The crew was celebrating below, their raucous laughter drifting up on the warm night air. The moon cast a silver path across the dark water, illuminating the sharp angles of Pritchard's face. "You are a strange creature, Isabella," he said, his voice a low rumble blending with the sound of the waves. "You calculate trajectories with the precision of a scholar, yet you fight with the ferocity of a wild dog." "I do what is necessary to survive, Captain," I replied, keeping my gaze fixed on the horizon. He stepped closer, closing the distance between us. I could feel the heat radiating from him, smell the familiar mix of leather, sea salt, and danger. He reached out, his calloused fingers brushing a stray lock of hair behind my ear. The touch sent a jolt of electricity down my spine. "And what is necessary tonight, Isabella?" he murmured, his stormy eyes locking onto mine. The kiss was sudden, fierce, and demanding. It was a clash of wills, a desperate grasping for connection in a world defined by violence. I responded with equal ferocity, pouring all my pent-up passion, all my lingering guilt, all my defiance into the embrace. Our romance was a secret, hidden from the crew, a turbulent undercurrent beneath the surface of our professional relationship. It challenged my commitment to my past and my future. I was drawn to his strength, his intelligence, his unapologetic nature. Yet, I recognized the danger he represented. He was a man who lived by his own rules, a man who could easily destroy the carefully constructed fortress of my new life. I had to balance the moral weight of my actions, the intoxicating power of my growing authority, and the complicated reality of my feelings for Pritchard. It was a delicate dance, a constant negotiation between the woman I had been and the woman I was becoming. The turning point arrived with the discovery of the Santa Victoria, a massive Spanish treasure galleon, heavily armed and laden with gold destined for the Empire's coffers. It was a prize beyond imagination, a prize that could secure our future and cement the fortune-bringer's reputation as the most feared ship on the sea. But the Santa Victoria was not just any ship. The intelligence we gathered revealed that a significant portion of its cargo was destined for the Archbishop of Seville. the very man who funded the expansion of St. Jude's convent. The empire that had imprisoned me was now sailing into my grasp. The heist required a daring, intricate plan. The galleon was escorted by 2 smaller warships, a formidable convoy that would annihilate the fortune bringer in a direct confrontation. We needed strategy, deception, and a deep understanding of our enemy. I locked myself in my cabin for 2 days, poring over charts, analyzing tidal patterns, and reviewing the theological texts I had committed to memory. I understood the Spanish mindset, their reliance on ritual, their deeply ingrained superstitions. I would use their faith against them. We intercepted the convoy in the treacherous waters off the coast of the Azores. It was a moonless night, the sea a churning expanse of black ink. I had instructed the crew to paint the hull of the fortune bringer completely black, rendering us virtually invisible in the darkness. We approached the convoy slowly, silently, utilizing the cover of a dense fog bank. I had positioned our ship precisely at the convergence of 2 conflicting currents, a navigational anomaly that the Spanish captains, relying on standard charts, would struggle to manage. As we neared the Santa Victoria, I implemented the final phase of my plan. I had a dozen braziers lit along the deck, filled with a mixture of sulfur and specific herbs I remembered from the convent's apothecary. The thick, acrid smoke billowed outwards, enveloping the galleon in an eerie greenish glow. I stood at the bow, dressed in a long, flowing white gown I had fashioned from a spare sail. I held a large wooden cross aloft, an imposing figure illuminated by the unnatural light. The crew, hidden in the shadows, began to chant a slow, mournful hymn, a twisted echo of the prayers I had once recited. The psychological impact on the Spanish sailors was immediate and devastating. The superstitious men, already unnerved by the fog and the treacherous currents, believed they were witnessing an apparition, a demonic vessel summoned from the depths. Panic swept through the galleon. Orders were ignored, discipline shattered. We struck hard and fast. The fortune bringer emerged from the smoke, our cannons unleashing a devastating broadside that crippled the galleon's mainmast. We grappled the ship, and our crew swarmed aboard, capitalizing on the chaos and terror. The battle was brutal, a chaotic melee of clashing steel and desperate cries. I fought alongside Pritchard, my cutlass a blur of motion. I moved with a cold, calculated efficiency, the discipline of my past life guiding my strikes. I felt no remorse, no guilt, only the exhilarating rush of power and the satisfaction of striking a blow against the empire that had sought to break me. The Santa Victoria fell, its vast treasure transferred to our holds. We slipped away into the night, leaving the escort ships floundering in the fog, searching for a ghost ship that had vanished as quickly as it appeared. The heist of the Santa Victoria elevated my status from navigator to a figure of legend. The tale of the demon nun who had outsmarted the Spanish fleet spread rapidly among the pirate enclaves scattered across the Caribbean. I was no longer just Isabella Warren. I was becoming a symbol of rebellion, a leader in my own right. The influx of wealth provided the means to achieve my ultimate goal. I wanted more than just a single ship. I wanted an armada. The scattered pirate fleets, independent and often at war with each other, were vulnerable. They needed a unifying force, a leader who could combine their strength and forge a formidable power. I began systematically reaching out to the most powerful captains, utilizing a combination of diplomacy, bribery, and intimidation. I orchestrated meetings in hidden coves, negotiating alliances and outlining a vision of a unified pirate confederacy, a force strong enough to challenge the navies of the world. Pritchard was initially skeptical, his independent nature rebelling against the idea of a larger organization. But he recognized the strategic brilliance of my plan, and his respect for me, both as a leader and a partner, overrode his doubts. He stood by my side as I consolidated the fleets, his presence adding weight to my authority. The process was arduous. It required managing colossal egos, settling ancient feuds, and establishing a strict code of conduct. I implemented a system of laws based on a twisted interpretation of the rules I had lived by in the convent, substituting religious devotion with absolute loyalty to the Confederacy. I created a new order, a sovereign nation on the high seas, an empire built on iron and grace. My transformation was complete. I was no longer the conflicted woman navigating guilt and freedom. I was the sovereign sea queen, commanding an armada of outcasts, a force to be reckoned with. I wore a crimson coat, a symbol of my authority, and a cutlass that never left my side. The final confrontation was inevitable. The Spanish Empire, furious over the loss of the Santa Victoria and the growing power of the pirate confederacy, dispatched a massive armada to crush us. It was a fleet of unprecedented size, a floating fortress designed to annihilate everything in its path. We met them in a vast, open stretch of the Caribbean, a clash of empires that would determine the future of the sea. The Spanish fleet was rigid, disciplined, and heavily armed. We were a chaotic, unpredictable swarm, bound together by loyalty and a desperate desire for survival. The battle raged for 3 days, a terrifying symphony of cannon fire, splintering wood, and screams. I commanded the Confederacy from the deck of the Fortune Bringer, my mind a whirlwind of tactical calculations. I anticipated the Spanish maneuvers, exploiting their rigid adherence to traditional naval warfare. We used speed, agility, and a ruthless disregard for the rules of engagement. I ordered coordinate attacks, isolating their larger galleons and swarming them with smaller, faster vessels. We utilized fire ships, rudimentary explosives, and a relentless, terrifying aggression that slowly broke the Spanish lines. The climax of the battle occurred when the Fortune Bringer engaged the Spanish flagship, the San Cristobal, a massive, floating citadel. It was a brutal, close-quarters slugfest, the two ships locked together in a deadly embrace. I led the boarding party, my crimson coat stained with powder and blood. I fought my way across the deck, my cutlass an extension of my will. I confronted the Spanish admiral, a man resplendent in armor and arrogance, a symbol of the empire I had escaped. Our duel was brief and decisive. I anticipated his strike, sidestepped his heavy sword, and drove my cutlass through the gap in his armor. He fell, the life draining from his eyes, a tangible symbol of our victory. The Spanish armada broke and fled, their spirit shattered. The sea was ours. In the aftermath of the battle, as the smoke cleared and the sea calmed, I stood on the quarterdeck of the Fortune Bringer, surveying the battered but victorious Confederacy. We had established a new law on the high seas, a realm where the discarded, the forgotten, and the rebellious could find their true purpose. We created an enclave on a hidden island, a sanctuary where our laws prevailed, a society built on mutual respect and shared defiance. It was a stark contrast to the sterile halls of St. Jude's, a vibrant, chaotic testament to the power of self-determination. My journey from Sister Maria Aglietti to the sovereign sea queen was complete. I had shed the suffocating robes of obedience and claimed the mantle of leadership. The scars of my past remained, a reminder of the fire that had fueled my escape, but they were no longer a source of pain. They were a testament to my resilience. The sea, vast and unforgiving, was my domain. The rhythmic crash of the waves against the hull was a constant reminder of the freedom I had seized, a freedom born from defiance and forged in fire. This was my legacy, a kingdom built not on pious submission, but on the unyielding strength of a spirit that refused to be contained. My throne was the quarterdeck, my crown the salt spray, and my domain the endless, beautiful expanse of the ocean. The end.
If you enjoyed this quick escape, hit the subscribe button for new stories twice a week. Until then, I'll see you at the next flip of the pages.